This is called the wet and wet wash. And as you may have noticed, as we progress through the different washes, they get more and more difficult to control. This one is probably the most difficult to control, but it's the most fun. A lot of my students really enjoy this one, especially when they let go and just let the watercolor do what it wants to do. This is the wet and wet wash. And what I'm going to do is apply a very wet puddle of water in the square or the rectangle that we've designated for this wash. And I'm not going to push hard with my brush. I don't want to disturb the paper. Watercolor paper is very fragile, and so I don't want to disturb the paper, but I just want to kind of move the water around and direct it to where I want it to go. I'm not tipping my paper as much with this because I want to keep it a little more flat. I'm going to tip it just enough so that the water will absorb evenly into this area. But I do want this puddle to absorb into the paper a little bit before I apply my pigment. Now, this wash has absorbed into the paper. We've given it a couple of minutes, and it's still very shiny, but it's not going to drip if I tip it in a steep way. I want to take some really strong pigment. Because this is already wet, whatever I put on here is going to be diluted. So I'm going to take paint right out of my paint wells, and I'm just going to drip pigment on, and you can see the water disperses that and makes that the edges very soft. I'm going to clean my brush and get a different color. I want to try this with a few different colors. You can drip it, you can brush it, and you can also tap it. And what I like to do for this technique is I hold one brush parallel to my paper, and then I get some pigment, nice wet pigment, and I tap onto the paper, and you can see the neat little marks that you can get. Now, if I tip this a lot, you can see the water is going to move the pigment around and blend it together quite a bit. If I like it, I'm just going to let it sit flat, or I'm going to allow it to dry. Now, this wash can easily be overworked. If I allow this to get very wet and puddled and the pigments mix together too much, they'll start to get gray and dull, and they won't be quite as vibrant and pretty. So with this wash, you really want to be careful not to overwork it, but it really makes some nice effects. And if you like to paint loose, this is a great way to do it.